It's time for The Scribble, your weekly fix of celebrity chats, bizarre stories in the news, and basic random chatter with best-selling author and syndicated radio host Jeremy Bradley. Make sure your seat is in the upright and locked position and your barf bag is securely in place. Here's Jeremy Bradley.
Thank you very much, Larson. Jeremy Bradley here. This is The Scribble. I'm going to cut to the chase because there's a lot to talk about today, so we're going to keep the intro short. Are you suffering from content overload? I realize the irony of me asking you that while you're consuming content, but I think you'll know what I mean when I get into the first couple of minutes of the explanation, all right? And it starts on The Scribble right after this.
Isn't it crazy that you wait for payday, but before you know it, you're strapped for cash again? It's time to stop blowing your money and become a smart spender with the book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com. Learn simple ways to cut costs at home every day and during special times of the year. Don't go broke at Christmas. Don't remortgage the house for a fancy vacation. The book is filled with tips to save you money throughout the year. Check out the best-selling book, The Official Guide to Being an American Cheapskate at cheapskatebook.com or on Amazon and iTunes.
Jeremy Bradley here, back on The Scribble. So this idea came to me a couple of days ago. I was at home watching TV. Now, we still have cable TV at home. We still have landlines. And the reason being, one, we're old. But two, as an entertainment host, I need to have first run of the shows when they air. So it's not like I'm being held hostage, it's just kind of part of the business. And at the same time, we need to have a landline because, again, I host radio shows and things, and we need to have a reliable phone in our house. And it's also just an emergency and safety thing, too. So anyway, so I was watching, I think it was, I can't remember the network. The show was called TV We Love. They're going to look it up and tell me as I'm talking to you. And they had things like a 1 hour kind of retrospective on shows like MASH and Cheers, Happy Days. It was on the CW, thank you. And it's kind of fun watching those kinds of shows because, first of all, let me say, like, Happy Days was before my time, but I still know certainly I know the theme song, but I know the stars from it. Marion Ross was on the radio with me promoting a book many years ago. So Henry Winkler did a movie in my hometown of Winnipeg. I think it was last year. So I'm not familiar with the show. I mean, I'll know the characters' names if I think about it. But certainly watching the one about Cheers. And I like going back and watching the True Hollywood Stories. Those are still on YouTube. If you're from my generation, you remember those. So I was watching the one about, Beverly Hills 90210, Saved by the Bell, Family Feud, Wheel of Fortune, The Price is Right, Roseanne, Home Improvement. Did I say Home Improvement already? Full House. Because it just takes me back to that time. So it started to have me think about how, TV ain't what it used to be, right? Like, they don't make shows, like, you hear that all the time. Same thing with music, right? Music's not the same. It's all computers and it's all whatever. So that was kind of what my thought was that TV just sucks now because it doesn't compare to that, to the 3 or 4 camera sitcom, Three's Company. Oh, that's another one I watched, Three's Company, too. Facts of I've watched a whole shitload of them and it was great. There was one I saw about Celine Dion, so not a television show, but because they did them about people too. Oh, and Prince and Michael Jackson, I watched those ones too. So it just takes me back to that 90s 2000s era where the shows were funny, the characters were, the humor was okay. I mean, I've got a sick sense of humor, I really do. It's filthy, it's sex, it's depending on who you ask, racist or whatever, but again, it's jokes, it's in fun. So when I watch the shows now, though, and quite honestly, especially when it comes around time for the Emmys and you see the nominations, and I haven't even heard of half of the shows because this is now, here we go, as an entertainment reporter, yes, this is a strange admission, but again, hear me out. I have never once logged into Netflix. Ever. But here's the thing. when you're in media, they will also send you content or give you, access to things. So the actual, like Netflix on your phone or on your TV or whatever, I've never logged into that. They will do like a Dropbox kind of a thing, or they'll send you a link just to watch something. But to actually, type in a password or something on Netflix, I've never done that. So I haven't heard of most of the shows that get nominated for Emmys. I mean, I've heard of the ones that are popular, but I mean, you've seen this if you've watched even the Oscars or whatever it is. You haven't heard of half of the nominees anymore because there's such a wide spectrum of production studios and streaming channels or streaming platforms or whatever you want to call them. And it's almost just impossible. So I was thinking that, okay, I'm just this old curmudgeon, and every show is sort of a takeoff of something else, generally, right? Like when you think of sitcoms, going back to the 2000s, you had the dumb character, you had the slut, you had the, the sarcastic one, you had like it was sort of cookie cutter at that point, right? And so you eventually run out, right? It's kind of, all right, you can only do... It's like when you watch Survivor. They just do the same competitions now over and over again. Really. I mean, I look at that and go, oh yeah, it's different people and, it's different physical... not attributes, it's a physical competition. So you don't know who's going to make it, you have your favorites. But at some point, you kind of look at it and go... I've already seen this competition. Like, it's not really, there's some sort of originality missing from it. So I think after, how many seasons, 50 seasons, Survivor, rightly so, has run its course in terms of creative, ideas. Fine. But that's kind of where I'm like, have we seen it all? And so I come into the office and I talk about this show called Shows That We Love or Loved or whatever it was called. And so we started to have this conversation, and it goes back to the whole thing about not even necessarily when you only had 3 channels, so everybody was watching the same thing on the same night at the same time, and then you talked about it at work the next day. It wasn't so much that, but you just didn't have that overconsumption of content because you spent all day at school or work, whatever you would do in the daytime, right? And then traditionally you would come home, have supper, and then you would watch TV at night, right? That's why it was called prime time, because that was, the high viewership. And so you really, unless you had a VCR taping stuff in the daytime, I mean, you really only had a couple, maybe a few hours of TV every day, right? You'd watch, let's say that you were into the sitcoms, right? So you watch Thursday night must-see TV on NBC. Oh, and I watched a special about that too. So Thursday night, your NBC, sitcom block, you've got 4 sitcoms for 2 hours, and then a drama or something after that, right? I think it was ER or something that would come after the 4 sitcoms. So there's your 3 hours. You would watch the late night news, and then you would turn into Letterman or Leno, right, on the late night talk shows. And then that was it. You called it a day. Your TV was not on 10, 12, 14 hours a day. One, because, again, you had limited, channels, right? Now your TV can access the internet. It can do all those things. So you really are kind of on your TV, or phone, I guess, for a lot longer than you used to be. So, okay, so I as I said, I watched, then I started thinking about how, just the writers are shitty or just, and then you just don't have that loyalty to shows anymore. There are still some that you might watch, your friend is watching, so you watch and then you guys talk about it later, or you watch it together or something. But it wasn't it wasn't appointment viewing. You weren't, just, oh my God, I got to home. Oh, I got to be home for 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock because such and such is coming on. Because again, you can record it now. I get that. But like I'm saying, it's not a priority now necessarily to watch those shows, especially when they're on, because again, I do it all the time. I'll record a series and then just watch the 6 episodes or whatever it is all in one sitting. So you don't have that anticipation, right? You'd watch the show, so let's say Survivor, right? You watch it on Wednesday or Thursday, whatever night it's on. Now, I don't know because I just record it and watch it later. But you would leave you on a cliffhanger, right? And you'd have all week to talk about it with others and then, wonder what's going to happen, especially during, sweeps and ratings and season finales and things like that. So it made you anticipate and appreciate it more, right? Oh, it's on tomorrow. Okay, I got to get home tonight. Right? Again, if you're in your 40s like me and you when you went to work or school or whatever, stage in your life you were in the early 2000s, that's what people were talking about, right? Oh, it's Survivor tonight. Oh yeah, I got to get home. Oh yeah, I'm going to go get some snacks. And oh, we're doing a Survivor party or whatever for the finale even too. That was my thought. So I come here, as I've now said, I think for the third time, fourth time. So I come here and I have this discussion with our team. And again, we're in our 40s, 50s, and 60s here. Bonnie's in her 70s. So the conclusion that we sort of came to and all agreed upon was that it's content overload, though. Because it's not necessarily a show per se now. You've got, you can watch little snippets and chunks of things. So you watch, a 10-minute, 20-minute YouTube video. And then you go to another one on a different channel on somebody else's page. And then you go... then you might watch a show that you recorded, and then you open your phone and you go on social media, and then you look at a stupid TikTok video for a minute and a half, and then it shows you another one that will interest you, and then another one. You get hooked into that loop. You know what I'm talking about. And so that's what it was that it's not necessarily about not enjoying television, because what I find, and this is what's remarkable to me, is I go back to those classic shows. So the ones I was talking about earlier. Home Improvement, Golden Girls, not Full House really, but Alice, Maude, WKRP in Cincinnati. I'm trying to think of the ones that I've been watching recently. I flip back into those. Now again, Maude and WKRP, those were all in the 70s. That was before my time. I was born 82. So, but now that I'm older and I kind of watch them and I was just, oh yeah, again, those were just really, really funny shows back then, right? Three's Company, Roseanne, Married with Children. These are the ones that I just, I grew up on, and they were just funny. Even though you've seen them a million times, you still laugh at them. You still, enjoy them. But it was content overload, where at some point, because you're consuming content all day. Don't give me this crap that, at work, I pay attention at work. I challenge anybody who, again, certain professions excluded, but I challenge anybody who works just in a regular office to tell me that you don't look at your phone at least one time every 30 minutes, every 15 minutes, every 10 minutes, every 5 minutes. Yes, you do. I own a company. I have employees. I know exactly how often people, because that, again, when I'm paying you, when you're on my dime, I'm absolutely searching and looking and seeing whose productivity is up and whose is down and who's on, who's on their phone and who's not. Because here's the thing. At our company, you're not required to use your phone to do work stuff. So you can't even go and say, oh, well, it's work email on my... No. That's a different phone altogether. Fine, have that one out. But your personal phone is not work related. There shouldn't be anything work related on it. So no. But again, you go all day consuming content. And so you just don't have that appreciation for it anymore. I kind of think about it like a food reviewer, like a restaurant reviewer. Your job is tasting the food and writing about it, but then after a certain point, can you really enjoy food without being critical about it? That's like, for me, I was an editor at a publishing company, 20 some years ago. And when you're an editor, looking at, we were doing magazines, so you're looking at, 80 to however 100 and some pages per issue. And you're dealing, we did trade magazines, so you would have different industries and different clients that you'd handle. But either way, you're still, you're handling 6, 7, 8 clients. You're reading at least, depending on the time of the production schedule, you're reading, a full magazine every day. When you get a magazine, you're not reading every single goddamn word in it as a consumer. You're just not. You probably jump some of the articles you're not even interested in. As an editor, you are literally reading every word on every page. That's the cover, that's the back, that's the index, that's, every word, every page number, everything is what you're looking at when you're an editor. And so it takes the joy out of reading after a while. Truly, it does. I can't go into a store and a typo screams at me, like a misspelling or whatever it is, just screams at me. So much to the point where it's what I'm known for, that people will actually take pictures of spelling mistakes on TV, on the news or whatever it is, and send them to me. Seriously. And I do the same thing. I might even call out places when they do it. But again, so for me to leisurely read, because I'm also a best-selling author, and so when I would do interviews for my books, when I was putting out books, people would assume that I loved reading because I was an author, and, you know, authors and writers and blah, blah, blah. And so I would actually say, I don't read. I don't like reading. I did it for, you know, how many years as a job, but you just can't shut that off in your brain. No matter how much you try, that typo, every wrong word, every, you know, wrong punctuation. I go to the BBC website, I look and see that when they have quotes, the period is outside the quotation marks. The BBC of all places. It drives me insane. And I haven't been a quote-unquote editor for magazines, you know, in 20 years. But again, you know, I was a newspaper columnist for 20. I still write, you know. So those are just things, again, you just can't shut it off. So back to the whole content consumption thing. I mean, just, right? You're just always on a screen. You're always on a screen. When we were putting together our Buff Radio station, buffradio.com, and we were listening to the coffee and we were listening to the songs. Now, let me just backtrack here. Buff Radio is our coffee company's 24/7 streaming station. It's coffee and tea music streaming 24/7 for Buff Boy Brewing, buffboybrewing.com. And I understand why when I watched shows like American Idol, how Simon Cowell can just be so frustrated listening to auditions over and over and over and over again, because we would get all these, for our radio station, we're getting these finished tracks, and I'm listening to them, and after a while you're just kind of like, oh my God, it's another song. Oh my God, how many more do I have to listen to? 40 more to listen to tonight? Okay. How many more now? 25? Okay. How many more now? 10? How many more now? 5. And eventually, as much as I love music, I was sick of it during that. Sick of it. Think about how many times have you had that? Where, let's say that you're going to go walk the dogs, or you're going on the treadmill, or you're, I don't know, whatever, you're at the airport or something, and you put in your headphones, because the default is, I'm going to listen to music. And you might have hundreds of songs on your phone or device, whatever you have, but you just don't want to listen to any of them. And you kind of get into that funk, like I was just saying. Oh, I've listened to that one. I have that because what I do is I download those compilations. So I will have, you know, the best of Celine Dion, the best of Pink, the best of Matchbox 20, the best of Spice Girls, the best of Backstreet Boys, the best of NSYNC, the best of whoever. And so it ends up being 40, well, an hour, I don't know, depends on the album length, but it's basically, you know, the best hits of Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson. You know, I listen to them, and I download it as one big file because it just goes from one song to the next. So I use that when I'm walking the dogs, which is generally about 45 minutes to an hour. And I already know the songs in order because I've listened to it so much, but there are some times when I'm going for the walk that I'm just kind of like, I don't want to listen to any of these. I don't know. I'm just not feeling the music today. I just don't want to listen to anything. And so it's content overload. How many times have you, one more question before we take a break, but how many times have you just even been scrolling on your phone? It's almost like you open a web browser and you don't even know what to look up, but you just feel like you should be looking up something. I did that at jobs back in the long ago, before phones were intruding, encroaching on the office workspace. But I remember having jobs where I was bored out of my mind, and I remember some of my friends who also, you know, maybe didn't like their jobs or whatever it was, and I would come in because I was the writer at these companies, and if there was nothing for me to write, it was just a matter of killing time on the computer. And so my friends would be like, oh my God, I'd love to just web surf all day. You know what, though? In all honesty, it kind of gets old really fast. Like, you're bored out of your fucking mind, you know, by 9:30 in the morning. And then you sit there and go, oh my God, I got 7.5, 8 hours to go still. Yikes. Because now you're just Googling, now you're just searching stuff for the sake of searching stuff. And I don't feel that to be very fulfilling. It's just, you know, it's just weird. Now you are just consuming content for the sake of consuming content. And what's the point? Yeah. So send me your thoughts live, LIVE at jbonair.com, live at jbonair.com. And I just want to, in the next segment, I'm going to talk about just, again, the love of, sitcoms and classic TV, and I kind of want to go back there.
Ever had something to get off your chest but never had the balls to say it? That's a load of crap. Speak Free with JB.com is exactly what you've been waiting for. Your chance to tell it like it is and not care what anybody else thinks. Have your say on issues of the day. Join newspaper and radio columnist Jeremy Bradley as he tells it like it is. Hundreds of thousands of people have stopped by, including some well-known celebrities who have had a chat with JB and speak candidly about what's really going on in the world. You can join them too. Have a rant or a rave. Be brave and head on over to www.speakfreewithjb.com now.
Who are the Kardashians feuding with now? What did that little thug Justin Bieber do this time? Who's getting hitched? And who's headed for Splitsville? Hear the latest celebrity news and gossip every day on Entertainment Wrap-Up. The good, the bad, the ugly, but mostly the ridiculously hilarious. It's all recapped in this daily segment at entertainmentwrapup.com. Have a laugh at the expense of the rich and famous when they take themselves way too seriously. It's 3 minutes of time-wasting fun at entertainmentwrapup.com. Check out Entertainment Wrap-Up at entertainmentwrapup.com. Brought to you by Speak Free Books.
It's never too early to start thinking about your next holiday. Have you checked out Mexico recently? From tequila tasting, swimming with horses, to ziplining through the jungle and watching whales and dolphins in their natural habitat, Puerto Vallarta has it all. Visit mexico.jbonair.com to see all the fun PV has to offer. That's at mexico.jbonair.com for hundreds of photos, interviews, and videos from around the tourist hotspot. Check out mexico.jbonair.com for all the fun. That's mexico.jbonair.com.
Jeremy Bradley here, back on the Scribble. Earlier I was talking about Cheers and MASH and Full House and Alice. That was the time when shows had a theme song. Friends is probably one of the biggest ones that people would know. And, I understand why they don't have them now because, one, the cost, and then two, there's a time crunch because there's now more commercials sometimes for sitcoms. So just the cost of it, though, right? If you're licensing it or whatever it is that you're doing, if it wasn't necessarily specifically written for the show, and then the cost of producing the song, and, budgets are being cut, and then at the same time, shows are lasting maybe one season, so, is it really worth all that effort? So, there's plenty of reasons why shows don't have theme songs anymore. But again, I think that when they did, that was much more relatable, right? Married with Children. Like, there's so many of them that you just hear it. And when I watch Name That Tune on Fox, well, speaking of Simon Cowell, Randy Jackson is on that, right? When they do a TV show, that's where I'm just like, it just takes you back. And you even see the reaction from the contestants and Jane Krakowski, the host, and the audience. Like, they sing along, you all know the words to it. And so again, you just had more of a connection to it. The song resonated with you. It kind of got you into it because, all right, the show is starting. Here's the Friends theme song. Now I'm pumped. We go to a commercial before we've even really seen anything, which I've always found that to be weird, right? You're already thrown 3 minutes of commercials before you even see anything from the actual actors in the episode. And I miss the classic TV theme song. Obviously game shows, Wheel of Fortune, Price is Right, or whatever have them. Fine. That's a little bit different though. But yeah, it just, the sitcom. When I heard that at it's probably the Emmys and the Golden Globes. I was trying to think of which one it was, but it was a couple of years ago. Here I see, to me, one award show, having covered them for 20 years, one of them just blends into the other. It might have been the Globes for the TV categories. But anyway, the point is that there was not one of the major networks nominated in the main categories. So that's your CBS, your NBC, your ABC, your Fox, right? I think it was all streaming. It was all, Amazon, Netflix, or whatever. It was all the other ones, not the traditional TV. And so I remember because when I first started covering award shows and doing the red carpets it was all the TV network people. That was the big thing. They were the only ones that were around. Nothing else existed. And so now you look at it and go, wow, it's really changed. Like, it's really flipped. And it's funny because when you watch actors, you hear about them. They always talk about how it's great opportunities for other people with these streaming platforms, whatever. But here's the thing. This is the thing. It's killed the movie industry, I think, because when you look at the box office for a lot of movies, what was that one that Sydney Sweeney was in? Was it called Christie, the boxing one that flopped? You make more money in a year than that took in the box office in its first weekend. But people just celebrities are getting watered down, right? Because the definition of celebrity now is not the same as it was back then. So I think that that's where it's not as fun for the traditional or, historic A-list celebs to do these award shows, because they're being upstaged by all these newbies, which again, for the viewer, for diversity, for opportunities, whatever, it's great. But what I'm saying is, for show business, I think that they're probably threatened by it. When you would watch the Academy Awards back in the day, or Oscars, I guess, whatever you want to call it, Oscars is what they call it on TV now, you would know the name. You wouldn't necessarily know the projects, right? But you would know the names of the key people nominated in those actress categories. You would, because that's what a celebrity was. They were all household names. When you watched it this year, if you were to do a ballpark guess on what percentage of the names of celebrities that you knew, was it more or less than 50%? Now, as an entertainment reporter, for me, it's a little bit over 50%, but just because there's so much buzz about it leading up to the Oscars that, now, maybe I'll rephrase that question is, prior to the Oscar nominations and the lead up to the Oscars, how many of them had I heard of? Probably less than 50%. And so that's where I think that celebs who, again, when this whole streaming thing started, thought it was great because there's going to be more roles, there's going to be more opportunities. No, what's happening is these smaller production companies are going for lesser known people, not having to pay them a shit ton. And those were the ones that are now winning awards. So not to say that the A-list celebs are, skipping the award shows, which a lot of times they are. It's like it's not as fun for them anymore, right? Because there's all these newbies now. There's all these kind of, they're outsiders. The celebrity world used to be this little clique, right? It used to be hoity-toity and exclusive. And now that's not the case. And now when an actor was able to command millions and millions and millions for a role from one of the big studios, your Universal, your Sony, or your, whoever, Fox, 20th Century or whatever. Now, though, it's these little guys that are coming in with little shoestring budgets. Maybe if the actor is, needing the work or just wants to do something and doesn't need the money, fine, they'll take on the role and they'll, maybe get $1 million, maybe. But it's work and it puts them out there and whatever. But now, and same thing with TV shows. When I saw, let's talk about Ted Danson. I mentioned Cheers. He was making big time money back then when you're the number one show on NBC. Absolutely. He comes back for that show that was called The Mayor or Mayor? It was on NBC, so he was back on NBC. And it lasted 2 seasons. It was kind of funny, kind of not. But that somebody, he's now you could argue if he's A-list or not, but he's still legendary, certainly. Maybe he would come in expecting $1 million, or $700,000 an episode or whatever. But the reality is he's not going to get anywhere near that because the ratings are just, they're just not there. With ad revenues declining for the major networks and, streaming audiences just not really paying attention to a full-length sitcom, really, that's where I think that actors like that, who've had a big-time sitcom in the past, look at this and go, I love TV, but it's just not the same anymore. Let me just quickly go into news anchors, right? So you have your Anderson Coopers, your Wolf Blitzers, Rachel Maddow makes a shit ton of money. I think, what is she, $15 million a year working, one show a week? But okay, so that's not a good example. But anyway, so you have, these household names. Wolf has been at CNN for how many years, right? Anderson's been there for just as long. Well, almost as long. When they're reportedly making $3, $5 million, $7, $10 million a year, And by the way, their audiences are less than what my syndicated radio show audience was getting. You know, they're pulling in maybe 500,000. We would have at some points 800,000 listeners across our shows. I certainly wasn't making millions then, but what I'm saying though is when it comes time for these contract renewals for somebody like Anderson Cooper, you expect a raise, right? Because I've been here so long and I've, done this and done that. Now I host how many different podcasts and shows and I go to how many war zones and I do this. But the network is like, yeah, but you know what, buddy? The ratings though, like if you're not pulling in the audience and some random YouTube page has more, of an audience than you do. And that's where I think what's happening is they start giving him all these podcasts. And then he hosts this weekend show, which I've never understood a show like Dateline where they have Lester Holt stand outside by a bridge. This is Dateline. And then you're like, what does he even do? So he's not the correspondent doing the story. He's got nothing. He's just standing outside there introducing. So they can shoot 6 of those in one day, 10 of them in one day. And now he's done. But he's the host of Dateline. Well, what the fuck does he do? Same thing with Anderson on CNN. He's the whole picture, the whole story, the whole picture, whatever it's called. Again, he stands there in front of a giant screen. He's not the one doing the stories. But he can say, well, I host another show. Oh, I host 2 podcasts for CNN. I do this and that. Well, that's why, though, is that they're trying to find they're giving him more work to justify the paycheck. Same thing with The View. The View, when that was in its height of the show, when we had almost all of them on the radio with me, they would come in at, I think it was 8 o'clock. They would come in, they would be in hair and makeup for like 2 hours. Sometimes they needed it. And they would go through their hot topics. They would talk about the guests, whatever it was. They would know what they were discussing. And then they would tape the show at whatever time it is, 11 o'clock. They would be out by noon. Out the door, gone. They, 10 minutes after anyway. It's not like they were literally walking out of the building right after the credits. But, they were out of there probably by 12:15, 12:30. That was their workday. Now, with The View, they make it seem like, oh, The View is in such high demand. No, I think what the network is doing, and I could be wrong, but my speculation, just being in this industry as long as I have been, is I think if the hosts are expecting that multi-million-dollar salary like they were getting, then they need to make up for that. They're working full 8-hour days for the most part now. There's none of this, we just, okay, peace out at noon. Now they don't necessarily tape live shows on Friday, so they'll double tape something on Thursday. They will, they've got their weekend editions of the show. They've got a podcast that, now it's funny because again, it's portrayed to the audience as, oh, more View everywhere. We got our digital, we got this, we're on streaming, we got a podcast, we got a weekend show, we got whatever. I think it's the network saying, hey, you want your $2 million salary? Well, you know what? You're going to host, you're going to be on the show, the regular show, 5 days a week, or 5 episodes a week. You're going to, do this podcast that promotes the show. You're going to do a weekend show. You're going to do, I think that's what they do now. You got to justify it. So, again, that's where, when you look at actors who are, used to do TV shows or movies, they're not getting the money that they were. They're just not. So I think, like I said at the start of the segment, is while they went and said, oh, opening up the floodgates to streaming and ever gives more opportunities to new directors or whatever, now I want to see how you feel about it. Now that there's more competition for actors and roles and things like that, I want to see. See how you feel about that. Trust me, I'm not going to lie. When, I was a trained journalist, working for the newspaper for 20 years and, best-selling author who's, a writer who's got, professional experience and education. When blogs came around, when a podcast came around, again, for me being in radio for as long as I was, it was very threatening because, now everybody can do this. Now everybody has a platform. Now everybody can write a blog. Now everybody can, host a show, where it was a little bit more exclusive back in the day, right? To get airtime on a radio station, you needed to prove your shit. You wouldn't, no radio station was just giving some random flunky 2 hours of time. No way. You had to prove yourself if you wanted airtime. Trust me. Same thing with the newspaper. When you're limited in pages and space and whatever it is, you need to have your shit together, be a good writer, make your point if you want to be a columnist. And again, so when blogs came around, or YouTube or whatever it is, I would look at that and go, eh. And that's, partially why I stopped the syndicated music shows, was that I didn't like the music that was coming out. I didn't. We were, for the last few years, playing kind of older 2000s music anyway. You would never have heard any of the new stuff from any of these new artists. You would never have heard, Billie Eilish or, whoever, just because, well, I guess some of them weren't around, 5 some years. Well, no, she would have been around. But, I just didn't like the music. I didn't like the sound of it. Maybe it was making me feel like I was too old for that kind of music. I don't know. But I wasn't into it. So at that point, I was kind of like, you know what? Now you're just not a needle in a haystack. That means something different. But now you're just a drop in the bucket. Now you're just a little tiny fish in this massive ocean. And, it's such an oversaturated environment. And so at some point I was just kind of like, yeah, I'm not, because everybody had to stand out, right? Everybody had to have their shtick or their gimmick or whatever it is. And, whether it's people who make YouTube prank videos or, it's you got to keep upping your game. You got to kind of keep, and I just didn't want to compete like that. I just had no interest in it. Especially having been in the industry for as long as I was, it's like, you know what, let's let another generation do this. I'm not going to dance around like a fool. And I kind of witnessed that when David Letterman was hosting his, when he was hosting The Late Show on CBS. I wrote a newspaper column about that, coincidentally, that he was just phoning it in. You could just tell. He wasn't doing the stupid pet tricks or the fun segments or running around the building or going outside and doing these, things like he was back in the day. Could be because he was older, could be for whatever reason. But if you were a regular viewer of the show, you're kind of like, he's just lost his spark, So that's where, new blood comes in, or, they make a change. So what do you think is it content overload? Have you just everywhere you look, and as much as people want to go and say, oh, I'm going to unplug this weekend. And how many times do you see on social media, people make those big grand announcements? I'm taking a break from social media. You know what I do though? When I see that, I'll take a screenshot and I'll go and check their account in a couple days and just see, are they posting? Are they, like what, that was a quick break, wasn't it? Yeah. Couldn't survive. So, can you go a full day? Let's say that you're around the house. It's the weekend, whatever, your day off or something. Can you go a full day without consuming some sort of digital content? Can you? You can lie and say, yeah, but we know the answer to that, right? So send me an email, live, L-I-V-E, at jbonair.com, live at jbonair.com. We're out of time, so I want to thank you all for tuning in. Share your thoughts, and we'll engage in emails back and forth, because that's how old I am. You can fax me. I think we still have a fax line here. But anyway, my name is Jeremy Bradley. This is The Scribble. I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye for now.
We hear you chirping. Get scribbling. Tweet up The Scribble at The Scribble Show. Join the discussion with Jeremy Bradley. It's all going down right now on Twitter at The Scribble Show and at thescribbleshow.com. Want more Scribble? Check out thescribbleshow.com for past shows, celebrity interviews, cheapskate tips, and more. That's at thescribbleshow.com and on Twitter at The Scribble Show. The Scribble is a speak-free media presentation.